This is the Elite Entrepreneurs Podcast, where we teach you the proven methods to grow your seven-figure business to 10 million and beyond. Please welcome your host, Brett Gilliland.
Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of the Elite Entrepreneurs Podcast. I am Brett and excited to be with all of you. Every week, I have an opportunity to interview amazing guests, and today is no exception. Today, my guest is Isabelle Guarino. Isabelle is the COO of a company called Residential Assisted Living Academy, RAL Academy, and in the name, it talks about their assisted living work that they do. Isabelle is a fantastic business owner and business leader. She spent some time as a flight attendant. She knows customer success and service. She spent time at Walt Disney World as an intern and has been leading RAL Academy for the past 8 years, keeping everyone in line and on task. She's been featured in many magazine articles on the topic of senior housing, and most recently was given the title of one of the top influencers in senior housing. Isabelle also won Aging Media's The Future Leaders of Assisted Living Award in 2020, being two of their 100 under 30 to make the list, which is awesome. Isabelle, thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to our show.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about RAL and what you guys do there. We can tell a little bit from the name, but I'd love to hear about your company, where you're located, and the growth that you've had recently, and then we'll get into your lessons learned as a leader.
I love it. Yeah, so we teach and train real estate investors and entrepreneurs, and maybe even medical professionals too, just whoever really wants to get involved in the niche real estate investing space of assisted living. And they're not commercial facilities, they're literally single family residential homes being used to house like 6 to 16 seniors who need 24/7 care, help with, medication management, all that, all the different things that seniors need help with by the time they need assisted living. So we own and operate 3 of those homes. And then I teach and train people how to start their own all across the country. We're based here in Phoenix, Arizona, but we teach nationally and have a whole lot of fun doing it.
Well, thank you for that context. I must admit, I thought you were more on the actual service side of assisted living, but if I had paid more attention to the name, Residential Assisted Living Academy, the academy is probably one of the most important words there, right? You're teaching others how to set these up.
We're on both sides. Yeah, because I own and operate 3, and then I also teach. So I'm on both sides of the coin.
Fantastic. Well, we're thrilled to have you here, not just because it's super interesting what you do, but because every business, regardless of the industry, as you go through those growing stages, we'll call them, instead of growing pains, right? As you grow, there's some things that you learn, and we'd love to just extract some of those personal experiences you've had as a leader in learning how to go from doing everything in the business to now building a team and scaling your business. So let's start with some of the, I don't know if you remember some of the painful moments of feeling like I'm the bottleneck and I can't do everything myself and I got to figure out how to scale this thing. Could we talk about your experience with that?
Yeah. Well, within the homes, within the care homes, I mean, that is huge. And we teach our students that because it's one of those things that if you don't set it up right from the beginning, it's really hard to work yourself out of it. So, with those care homes, right, you can get tempted to say, I want to save money and I want to become a licensed caregiver or licensed administrator. And I'm just going to do the work myself to save money in the beginning when we're not cash flowing as well. And I always tell people that's a big no because it's so hard to then work yourself out of it. Because as an entrepreneur, a lot of times when you do a role and you do a job, then you start to feel like you did it the best. And so hiring somebody else to do it, you're like, they're never going to do it as good as me. Right. And so it's really hard to rehire that position. And I remember in the beginning when we first started, we didn't really know what we were doing. There was no one there to teach us. There was no one there to hold our hands. And so we were involved a lot more. We were visiting the home often, and we were doing a lot of things manually, like paper records and all this stuff. And it was forcing us to have to be in the home. And later on, when we switched, switched and realized, wait, COVID really sparked a lot of amazing systems that allowed people to really build their businesses more hands off, more passively by implementing those systems. So instead of me coming in physically every week for a meeting, I can do it on Zoom, right? I can give you a call, right? Instead of every day me needing to check in on this or that, if we systemize everything and we make it all automated or processes on the computer and things like that, using all sorts of different technology, it can really help you be hands off. So over the years, we learned that. And then COVID really like cemented it to the fact that now our care homes, I probably go every other month. And that was from going almost every day to now every other month. And then I spend maybe 5 hours a week on the phone with our licensed administrator, just dealing with the day-to-day operations so that they can be the ones who's handling it all. And I'm the ones, hearing about the fire and how they put it out after.
Well, you said a lot there, Isabelle. Lots of great things to unpack. I want to go almost back to the beginning when you described telling people that if they build themselves into the process, I'm not using your exact words, but basically, if you set up your home in a way, if you set up your business in a way where you're an essential part of the delivery, you get stuck there.
Yes.
You absolutely get stuck there. And that was so good for you to realize first in your own homes and now to pass it on to those who you're teaching.
Yep.
And that's one of the hardest lessons for any entrepreneurs, to go from that thing that they learned how to do as good as or better than anyone else and then hand it off to somebody else. So could we talk about some insights or maybe some hard-earned experience on your part as to how do you get more comfortable with letting that go and not being part of the core delivery and having other people do that? What are some things you've learned to help make that transition a little smoother?
I think strategic hiring is what helps you feel more confident about it. If you're just hiring anybody and then showing them SOPs and saying like, hey, just do these things, you're not going to feel very confident in can they do it, right? And I know for me at least, if I do, when I do hire somebody, if they mess up the first time, now my trust for them, oh, I don't trust you now, right? And I'm like, I got to jump back in. And so that's the thing. It just keeps, right? It's the Godfather. They keep pulling you back in, right? And so I think it's so important to make sure that you're using strategic hiring. A tool that we use in our care homes and at our academy is called Predictive Index. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yeah, very familiar. Yeah.
So
But our audience might not be. So please say more about that.
So we use Predictive Index. We actually surveyed what some of our students were saying, like, hey, I have a top caregiver. They are amazing. And we surveyed 100 top caregivers across the country, 100 top licensed administrators. And we found that they almost all fell into 3 similar categories. So 3 different profiles each. So now when I go to hire somebody, I have them take Predictive Index and they need to be an 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, or 10 out of 10, or one of those profiles, right? They've got to be the right fit, because I know that their God-given skills, their natural ability to do the job, they're not going to be happy unless it's within their scope of work. So we have them take that, and then processes. So strategic hiring and processes. If you do not have it written down so meticulously, and what I mean by that is some of us may be visual learners or audio learners, and other people need to be shown hands-on. You need to have all 3 of those things in your SOPs. You cannot just have like, a visual, like, hey, here's what I want you to do. You also need to record it so they can hear you walking through the steps. And then during their training, I like to do hands-on training with them. So it's like, I have showed you verbally, I've showed you on video, so auditory, you can see and hear me. And then we've done it in person together. You can refer back to 2 of those 3 where we can't go back in time to refer to the in-person, but we can go back anytime you have a question on what paperwork do I fill out here? What do I do here? You go back, you refer. Now, if you have questions, feel free to call me, but it's triple training and reference so that there really should be little to no questions. And once we answer that question, it's telling me where I failed in my system. That question should now be added into the 3 forms of training so that I never have to answer it again for the next hire, right? If there's a question, it's not that they failed, it's probably that I failed. And if I can find it in the systems I trained with them, then it's simple. I'm not going to explain myself. I'm going to say, refer back to XYZ. But if it's not there, I failed. And I think that's important for leaders to know when you're hiring somebody, because it is scary and it's hard to become hands off. But if you set up strategic hiring and then really processed out systems, it actually becomes a lot easier, and you can take a lot of accountability for their success or their failure at the job.
Yeah, I think I love the way you said that. You can take a lot of accountability as a leader for their success or failure. I would add that not only can we, but we do. Like we all take full responsibility for whether or not people are successful or failing in that, and how we set it up and how we lead it. And I love the way that you talked about not just let's figure out who the right people are and increase the chance of success in our selection process, but then once they get there, what are we doing to make sure that the system is running the way that I would do it if I were there myself?
Yep.
And so super wise, both of those insights, both of those learnings. I just want to make a mention about predictive index because we haven't brought it up a lot on this show, and if people are still, is that a personality profile or what is that? It's a behavioral assessment actually, and it shows behavioral patterns in people, and we all kind of have some tendencies, behavioral tendencies. And if you understand the key behaviors for a particular role and can put together a nice profile for that, then you can hire against that. And I love the way that you described that, Isabelle. And I think that was great stuff. Anything else you want to add on the predictive index thing before we move on?
I know it can be an expensive tool. I do know that, but it is really helpful. I mean, I have found every single time, if I don't use it or their profile is not a match, it ends up not working out. And so it costs money to onboard someone, and time and energy, and you don't want to waste all of this stuff on the wrong person. And so to me, it's an investment in saving myself down the road of not having to deal with all this stuff. So if, listeners are checking it out and you get turned away by or you freaked out by the price, it is expensive, but it saves you. And so think of it as an investment, especially if you are doing a lot of hiring. It can really save you in the long run.
Yeah, I appreciate that last comment too. So if I'm going to hire one person for a unique role, I may or may not do all of the homework to figure out who that ideal behavioral profile is. But the way you described is like, hey, we were hiring a bunch of these across, multiple locations.
Yeah.
And it made sense to do the research and get it right so that you could save yourself time and frustration in the long run.
Yeah.
Great. So predictive index, getting the processes down and training those people to be successful. I'm curious because it's one thing to find a fit behaviorally and somebody who can do the role from a skill set standpoint. What, if anything, have you all done to make sure that they're going to fit with your team or culturally? Is there anything that you do to make sure that, hey, these type of people work well with us and these don't, and we know who that is, and we never bring in the wrong people?
Yes, actually, I host a podcast called Young Boss Podcast, and I talk about all sorts of strategies and things like this. But when it comes to hiring for a good culture fit, I have our company core values, right? And I read them every week on the town hall. We reward, I don't want to say punish, but you know what I mean? We reward and we
You lead, you hire, lead, and
reprimand people based on fitting or not fitting in the core values. But one thing, it's really hard to find out what someone's core values are in an interview. And a tactic I've been trained to do is actually you ask the person, hey, I want you to think of 3 people who you respect and admire and look up to in life or business or whatever. And they'll think of 3 people, right? And then you say, I want you to list all 3 people and tell me 3 reasons why you look up to them. And a lot of times it's like, oh, it's my mom. She works so hard and she did this and whatever adjectives they're using, hardworking, right? Like selflessness, whatever, write down those adjectives for the three people they're describing. Those are their core values because that's what they look at other people and they admire in other people. And so if not everyone uses the same language, and so my word might be efficient, right? And their word might be, oh, he's so fast. He gets the job done, like right on time or before I even ask him. I know what he's describing. It's efficient, right? So look at their words. And if they match what you're saying, then that's great. If nothing matches, they're probably not a culture fit for you. So I think that's one thing is finding out their core values and seeing a match. Because if you just say, here's our company core values, do you fit them? They're going to be like, yeah, because
Yeah, I love those.
right? They'd be like, totally, that's my favorite. And it's like, no. So you have to find kind of a sneaky way to get it out of them. And then second, and I've learned this the hard way, sometimes when you're hiring people, especially if it's going to be a higher up position, you need them to come and almost be like also interviewed or also intermingle with the rest of the current staff. Because I have seen lower tier staff throw away higher tier people and bully them to basically get them out of the position or, try to make their life miserable or this, that, and the other. And you're like, they're amazing. Why are you doing this? But it's because they were not involved. They're not connected to this person. They feel threatened by them or whatever the case is. And so it's so important to incorporate them in that interview process, whether it's they get to have a group or team interview and ask whatever questions they want, or that person can come over to have a working interview and like hang out and talk to them. But especially for a higher up position, I think that is so valuable. And I learned that the hard way for sure.
That is such a great lesson, Isabelle. I'd like for you to actually flip that around a little bit because you described what happens. It's almost like a rejection response, right? If the organism doesn't accept that new person, there's like this rejection response and it doesn't work out. So what happens when the team has some ownership in the selection process, when they've been involved and they said yes to that person? What does that look like when the new person's coming in? What's the difference between scenario A and scenario B in terms of the team and how they respond to that person?
For me, what I've seen is that for the person who they are involved with the interview process, when their ideas are presented, they're on board with them. They're behind them. They're excited about them and they catch the vision a lot faster and easier. And they trust that person more because they feel that they chose them.
Yeah.
And it really like changes their mindset around interacting with this person. It no longer becomes when they say, oh, did you get this done on Tuesday? It's no longer accusatory. It's like, no, I'm genuinely checking up. Like, are you okay? Did you get it done on Tuesday? Everything cool? And they feel just a lot less threatened. And I think that is very much key. Like I said, especially when you're hiring a higher tier person, I think it could be good to do it for any position because if they're going to be working amongst the coworkers, they probably still need to have that buy-in and that camaraderie and all that good stuff. But especially for somebody higher up, because it can become very threatening to have that person come in with new creative, fresh ideas. And they're thinking, oh my gosh, they're coming for my job. Or, they're seeing something and they say, this could be automated, right? It's fresh eyes. And then that older person is like, oh my God, you're going to automate my job. I don't have work. And they just panic and go to the worst case scenarios. And it's like, no, automation doesn't mean you go away. Automation, someone still needs to oversee it and make sure, and it allows you to do more and better, higher use jobs, but they don't always see it that way. And so it's so important to get that trust, get that relationship built so that they take their leadership not as a threat, but as a true, like, let's all level up. We're on the same team and let's go at it together to really improve this.
We've really found what you said about the team being involved for any role. I like the distinction you're making. I know it's especially important for a leader who's coming in, but for any role, it's almost magical how it changes it from like, who are you, to, like in the hire where they weren't involved, like, oh, who are you? And you're like the new kid. And, there's a little bit of like I don't know, they almost like push them out a little bit versus, oh, you're my pick. I helped to select you. And now they have this vested interest in that person being successful because they want to be right. Like I chose them, I want to be right. So I'm going to help them be successful.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
amazing. So I love that you drew that out. Great. So what else should we talk about? So that's about getting the team set up culturally. That's where we were. How do we
Yeah.
make sure the culture stays well, healthy, whole? And you talked about reviewing this consistently in team meetings. You reward to it. You lead or coach to it if you need to be correcting in any way. And
Yeah.
I imagine you fire to it.
Yes, yes, almost all of our fires. The only other type of fire would be you're not hitting your key performance indicators, your KPIs. But
Right.
other than that, it's almost all based on core values because we want the right people in the right seats. And so if somebody fits the core values but they're not missing their KPIs, I'll give them multiple chances. Let's find another position for you. Let's strategize, where could I use you better? And now if I still can't find something, okay, KPIs is a fireable offense if you can't hit the mark.
Right.
But almost always it's core value. It's somebody doing something out of alignment, and it makes it very easy because it's like, hey, you agreed to these things. Every week you agreed to them. And
Right.
so when they don't hit it, it's like, or they do something totally out of character, it's like, this is not cool, and it doesn't fit with what we want, what we like, what we stand for. And so, just as well as I do, I can't keep you.
Yeah.
And I think it actually makes your team trust you more when you hire and fire based off of those, because they want to also be surrounded by people who value those same things because they also value those core values. And so
Yeah.
when you actually stand by it and someone's hitting their KPIs, but they are not a core values fit, and you say, but we need the money, you're actually not being very trustworthy to your team. You
Mm.
need to stand by them and you need to say, no, this is not right. And it may cost you in the long run, but it's going to actually cost your team over here. When you keep somebody who hits the mark, maybe financially, but doesn't hit the core values, it can become this snake in the grass through your team and spread bad culture and really bring you down from the inside out. And so I think it's really important to review them, stand by them, hire and fire based off of them, and be serious about them.
I think you're right. You said something. You said it may cost you in the long run. I think you might have meant it may cost you in the short run to get rid of somebody,
Yes,
but in the long run,
it could cost your
to get
team.
rid of somebody who's not a fit for your values, even if they're hitting those performance measures, in the long run, it's way better for your team, your customer or client experience. Everyone's better when you preserve that core,
Yes.
and that's what I was hearing from you. So
Yes. Thank you for that
good.
correction.
Yeah, no, that's because I love what you're saying. I'm like, I think you meant this.
Yeah.
All right, so I could talk to you forever, Isabelle. I think I want to be your new groupie. I got to listen to your podcast. So, what is that podcast called again?
The Young Boss podcast.
The
And
Young Boss. I don't qualify, but
yeah.
at heart, the Young Boss podcast. I love
Yeah.
that. All right, so I think we have time to get into one more topic. I'd love to have you discuss what it was like to get as you got bigger to where you couldn't have everybody reporting to you. There's
Yeah.
just too many people, and what it was like to start to build a leadership team and what you've learned about leading leaders, not just leading team members, but leading leaders.
Yeah, it's actually been really a fun transition because I shared with you before the show started that my father used to be our CEO. And I worked alongside him for about 8 years. And then 2 years ago, he passed. And then I got to take over. So I went from the integrator role, where pretty much everyone was reporting to me and I had my hands in everything and I was running it all, to then not being able to do that because the skills and talents required of me were more of the visionary role. And so I had to transition. And that's a strange and difficult transition to make that most integrators probably can't make because it's just not in their natural skill set. We were in a unique position where it's my father. So I don't mind playing second fiddle to him, even if my opinions, got put down for a couple years. And it worked out well that now, I can step into that visionary role. But with that transition, it was like a huge awakening. Like, you have to hire the right people underneath you because you literally do not have time in the day, right? What was being asked of me was to travel almost 33 weeks out of the year, to be the main stage presenter and the face of the business. And before, I got to be behind the scenes and kind of the bad guy, right? The bad guy to the clients. If the clients need to be told no, it was my job. I can't do that now as the face. I've got to be the nice guy. So it was a totally different requirement. And it was like, hey, like I can't do this alone and I need the team under me. And so it took a while for me to find the right people who I could trust because of what we talked about earlier, right? Really wanting to make sure that they could do the job just as good as me, if not better. And I think what I found with using those things we talked about in the beginning, the strategic hiring and the systems, was that actually there's people who can do the job not only as good as you, but better than you. And if you hire the right person, they'll surprise you with how much they can do. And so I'm really blessed now that my integrator is just an absolute rock star, and I can call, text, email her at any moment, and she's on it. And it really works well with me and for me. But I did have to like let go of that stuff and just be okay with it. And also know she's been with us over a year now, and it took a while to train her up, and it took a while for her to understand it's a totally new industry. And whenever you're hiring somebody new, they're probably coming from something different, and so it takes a minute. But I knew that it was going to take time, but I knew investing in the right person would be worth it. And so we first hired probably the wrong person, and quickly, slow to hire, quick to fire, made that decision, got her out, and then got the right girl in. And she's just blown me away with her capabilities. And I'm really blessed to have her now, because you can't do it alone, right? And the only way to scale and grow and it is to what do they say? The hustler has to die for the CEO to live. Like, you have to delegate and elevate. You cannot keep doing it all yourself. You will drive yourself crazy, and you'll actually stunt your growth. And when I was looking at the numbers, like, we got to grow. And so I have to let go. Like, me letting go and putting my ego aside, thinking I'm the best and I can do it all, I'm going to kill the business if I do that. Like, I have to be smarter than this. I've got to think ahead and look ahead. And so making those decisions, I've never been happier, and I'm not looking back. But it's definitely difficult when you're in the process of it.
So interesting how we came all the way back around to that point where we started, which is basically you have to let go. You got to figure out how to do that. And it's not just that initial transition from, but by the way, that one-liner, I want to hear it one more time, but transition from hustler to CEO. I've never heard that. So will you say it one more time?
Yeah, the hustler has to die for the CEO to live.
Okay, I've never heard that. The hustler has to die for the CEO to live. But that transition from entrepreneur or hustler to CEO, that's where most seven-figure businesses get stuck.
Yeah.
And that has to happen once, and where you become the leader. And then as your business continues to grow, you have to then actually take it to like leader of leaders. And there's like a next level version of that, which you were just describing. So really great. Isabelle, I've enjoyed thoroughly our time together. Can you let everybody know, aside from the podcast, that they can check out if they want to learn more about RAL Academy or connect with you on social? How would they do that?
Yeah, we are RAL Academy on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, everywhere, RAL Academy. And if you want to schedule a call with me or my team, you can reach us at ral101.com.
Wonderful. Isabelle, I know why they put you on those young, amazing people lists, because you are that. All right, everyone who's been listening, please share this episode and others, like, review, do all those things so that we can help as many seven-figure business owners as possible learn these lessons from people like Isabelle. We want to help. So thank you again, Isabelle, for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, we'll catch you all next time on the Elite Entrepreneurs Podcast.
You've been listening to the Elite Entrepreneurs Podcast with your host, Brett Gilliland. Be sure to leave a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. You may also want to visit our website, eliteentrepreneurspodcast.com, to find additional resources to grow your business from 7 figures to 10 million and beyond.